Hi, this is Joyce Hall from Hand Stamp by Joyce Hall. Today I'll show you lots of ways to color the True Love Designer Series paper, which is featured in the Stampin' Up! January through June mini catalog. It is a black outline on a white background, and you can see that we've got 6 patterns here that are floral patterns. And then on the other side are 6 geometric patterns. We are going to be using 2 of the patterns today, just a little bit of the polka dot and then this floral pattern. So let's get started. The first thing that I'd like to show you, and I'm not going to demonstrate the techniques, I'm just going to talk about what techniques I used. If you have questions about any of these techniques, please let me know and I will try to get a video done on the technique that you'd like more information on. The first one is using the Stampin' blends. So on this I use the Highland Heather, both the light and the dark blends, and the Granny Apple Green, and then the Daffodil Delight. So then I did the same thing and put it into a card. To do this, this is the Gorgeous Grape Pearl, which it comes from one of the sets of pearls that's in the catalog as well, the mini catalog. And to do this, I used the tailored tag. And to get the background, I took a piece of Gorgeous Grape cardstock, punched with the tailored tag, and then I just cut it right down the middle and separated it so that it would be a nice frame for that greeting. Then the next thing that I did was I used the burnishing method of using the sponge daubers. And I know I just told you that I wasn't going to show you the technique, but a lot of people aren't familiar with what burnishing means. And it just means taking your sponge dauber, patting it on the ink pad, and then just rubbing it in circular motions in the area that you want to color in. That's burnishing. So it gives a very different feel from just patting the sponge dauber onto the cardstock. Here is a finished card using that technique. And again, I used the Highland Heather, the Granny Apple Green, and the Daffodil Delight colors. Then another method is to use the markers. So just the Stampin' Right markers, which have a brush tip on one end and a fine tip pen on the other. And I used Granny Apple Green for the green, and then I used Gorgeous Grape and Highland Heather for the purples, and I used Daffodil Delight for the yellow. In this top flower, I used the Highland Heather for the petals, and I used the brush tip marker, which is the broad, and then I used the fine tip marker to draw in the shading, and then I used a blender pen to blend in the shading. This one is before using the blender pen, so you can see the difference between the two. On these samples, the first one, I used the new blending brushes, and the blending brushes have a larger head than the daubers, sponge daubers, and they're a little bit harder to use in small areas. So instead of using the daubers, so on this sample, I used the daubers for the Daffodil Delight in the center, and you can see all of the orange around the edge. That's because the Poppy Parade that I used for the petals bled with or not bled, but added to the color because I couldn't get the Daffodil Delight just right in the center there. And then I used Granny Apple Green for the leaves. On this sample here, I used the Daffodil Delight marker in the center, and then use the blending brushes for the petals and for the leaves. And here is a sample that I made using that technique. For this one, I did use the blending, I only used the blending brushes. I did not use the markers. And again, I used the same technique of cutting the tailored tag in half and then spreading it so that you get a nice frame around it. And I used the opal jewels for that tag. Then another technique is to take the watercolor pencils and use those without water and just color things in, which I did here. I used the Gorgeous Grape pen, the Daffodil Delight, pencil, the Daffodil Delight pencil, and then the Granny Apple Green pencil. When you're using watercolor pencils, here's a tip. Keep the pencil tips rounded, not sharp. If they're sharp, then you have more permanent lines. If they're soft and rounded, then it's easier for doing the blending and getting the strokes, broad strokes that you really want on that particular piece. So then the other thing that I did was used the same watercolor pencils, but I used the painters to get to spread the color around. And in this sample, one of the things that is important to know is if you want a hard edge, meaning you don't want bleed between one area and another area, so like if you blend the yellow and the purple, you'll end up with brown, which I didn't want. What you do is you color this area in first, use the water, let it dry completely, then color around it. So that's why I did the centers first, the leaves, and the leaf and the stem second, and then doing the petals last. So that's how you make sure that you don't get any blend. You let that area dry before you do the adjacent area. And here is a card that I made with that particular technique. And again, I used the Gorgeous Grape Pearls, which I really liked. And I also used a stamp from the stamp set that coordinates with this paper. So, and on this one, excuse me, I used that Happy Thoughts stamp set, which is a very nice one to use. So that's all that I have to give you today, but I hope you will try the True Love Designer Series paper and try some new techniques with it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you. Bye-bye.